Today I'm going to try this product. Organic energy drink, Pilot's Friend, fruit tonic. And it has a lot of caffeine in it. So I'm going to try it. It doesn't say whether I'm supposed to shake it or not, so I'm not going to in case it's a little bit carbonated. And here we go. It says crafted in Italy by doctors for pilots. So let's see if I can take off today. I'm going to try to talk to myself a bunch today. It's actually quite tasty. Fruit tonic, it tastes like fruit. I already had my yerba Mattei, which has caffeine in it too. And it is an easy switch from coffee to yerba Mattei for me. I like the Waukee brand. It was featured on a documentary about sustainability or something. I can't remember what documentary it was. Oh, it was a documentary with the guy who jumped out of the window in his sleep or something. And he was said to have some kind of disorder, and he woke up in the hospital without a broken bone and changed his life. I don't remember his name now. But anyway, he featured that company, and I knew about them probably 10 years ago at the eco-friendly show here. And they talked about how, at least at the time, their packaging was completely compostable and stuff. And I've been drinking their yerba Mattei for years. It's a lot cheaper to buy it from them online in bulk if you drink a lot of it than retail. So I'm drinking that because someone I know bought some and then gave some to me. So part of their business model is to employ the locals to make the Mattei and sustain the rainforest, because the Mattei actually grows in the rainforest cover, I believe. So they need to conserve the rainforest in order to grow the best yerba Mattei. So that's cool that they're doing that. Restoring the rainforest as part of their business model. And last night I used the CBD transdermal cream that has some other terpenes in it as well. And I could feel, when I was falling asleep, I could feel the edges of my body were kind of wavy. Not in a bad way, in a very gentle and nice way. And I slept really well. I took 2.5 quetiapine, or 2.25. So tonight I might take 2. If I'm going to add in the CBD transdermal cream, then that gives me incentive to try to lower other medications. Plus, I think that I'm in the part of the biorhythm where I don't need as many medications to fall asleep, possibly, because the awake dream algorithm is not there as much. So it's not making me have this dream stuff projected into reality, and then that wakes me up. I talked a little bit about that in terms of the lucid dreaming thing. So many interesting ways to think about it. And so I'm going to keep going with the CBD cream at night and decrease the medications. Try to decrease the trazodone too, maybe, because I've never been up as high as 150 milligrams. So we'll see. I just made a smoothie and drank it, and I think I am taking off a little bit. I had on one of my to-do lists that I wanted to find my Mother Earth Minerals Gold, and I thought it was in with my kitchen stuff, which isn't unpacked because I don't have a kitchen, and indeed it was. So I'm going to take a dropper of this. I remember looking up the different Mother Earth minerals and seeing if any of them had factors in mental health, and the ones that I found that did were gold, germanium, and cobalt. And one can just look up what that does in terms of mental health. Like, these could be cofactors in enzymes or part of the active sites of certain enzymes in the body. Rush of gold. Now, when I'm in a lower energy state, my brain doesn't come up with this stuff. It kind of hibernates. And this week, since I have access to space and a kitchen and everything, unimpeded, I'm making smoothies. I made overnight oats and I ate them this morning. And last night I made my broccoli dinner with lentils and the Indian sauce. Kind of upset my stomach. My stomach was kind of like, "Ooh, what's this? So many vegetables in one meal." But I'm sure my guts will get used to it and thank me for it. So my guts have been kind of on the move, if you know what I mean. And I'll try some germanium too. I've had these for a long time, but these don't have an expiry date on them. Place drops under tongue and wait 60 seconds before swallowing for maximum results. Okay. And cobalt. And for my next fun biological molecule experiment, when I found those drops, I also found this, reduced glutathione. I think I got it on Amazon quite a while ago. And it doesn't have an expiry date, but I got this to put up my butt because glutathione is something that's in the liver, and so a good way to get it to the liver is through the hepatic vein system that is surrounding the colon, the rectum, that space before you let it out. And that's why people do coffee enemas, that the coffee goes right into the rectum and it doesn't have to go into the colon, because the caffeine gets absorbed into the hepatic vein system there, and then that stuff goes to the liver. That's why it's not good to hold it, because the toxins go back into the liver. So I'm going to put this in a smaller baggie, because this baggie is really awkward to spoon the glutathione out of. So here's the glutathione. Looks kind of sketchy in this bag, but it's kind of expensive, so I only bought 10 grams, and I'm guessing it was probably like $50. And so I'm going to put a little bit in water, and then mix it up like this. This is my Swirl Alive water. I didn't boil it, but it's pretty aseptic water from what I know. But one could boil it, but it's just such a little bit that I'm too lazy. And then back when I used to inject B12, I kept the extra syringe things without the needle, because I needed a needle to go into the vial, and then I had to put a clean needle on to inject it, but that left me with an extra vial, which I left in like this so it's still clean. And then that way I can just take this up. See, it's way more than 3 milliliters. It's probably at least 6. So I'm just gonna go put this up my butt, and it's probably not gonna make me have to go. It'll just absorb into my body. So now it's up there, but it really doesn't feel like it's gonna stay very long. But I'll make a run for it when I have to. And then the other thing I found was this Sassafras Extract. And it says for external use only. I remember I did take it internally one time because somewhere I read you could still do that. But then when I read the actual directions, it says shake well before using and apply to skin with cotton gauze or massage into skin until well absorbed. So since I learned about this whole transdermal area at the base of the skull, like the hairline, base of the skull, maybe I'll just put some there to see what happens, because apparently there's a lot of open nerve endings there, and that's where I put my CBD transdermal cream. So this is pretty dark. So I'm just gonna put it there, see what happens. It smells kind of good, actually. It smells kind of like root beer. Maybe there's sassafras in root beer. There must be. And yeah, so I'm just gonna do that to experiment more with this area. I don't know much about it yet. I usually do the thing where if I hear from somebody, they've done a lot of research on a certain thing, then I go with what they've said instead of reading too much about it. Then maybe I'll read about it later, and that will build on my understanding of whatever. So a friend of mine said there's a lot of open nerves, sort of with a lot of open GABA receptors and different neurotransmitter receptors. So it smells kind of good. So I'll just leave this here for a bit of aromatherapy. But I remember reading about sassafras doing something for mental health, so I bought it. And that's what I used to do a lot, is try all these different biomolecules and different nutritional things and healthy things. And I think they're helpful, but I don't think they're the answer. I'm kind of just using them right now because my brain is in that type of mode of thinking of these other things to do, and also trying to use up some of the stuff that I have. And maybe it gives a boost in some way. And maybe not. Doesn't really matter. For me, experimenting with nutritional things is fun. It's part of my fun. And I think that's part of why I have done okay over the years, is because my hedonism is nutrition and health. So even though I get a little bit happy, a lot of times it goes, up my butt or at the base of my hairline or nutrients in my mouth. And that's something that is beneficial anyway. I think I'm going to go get rid of this glutathione. It's not going to stay too long today. Okay, that is better. So you can see how it's kind of fun to play with molecules. And yesterday I wrote what Dr. Peter Breggin said about psych medications. He said that they make you less of who you are. So if some kind of chemical medication can make us less of who we are, then what kind of molecules or nutrients can make us more of who we are? And I think there is something to that. And there are a lot of things out there that are designed to enhance our energy or our memory or cognition or things like that. But if anyone's ever been in mania, one might like to know what kind of molecules and nutrients would allow us to stay in that type of energy and space, or integrate it more when we move into more of an objective state of consciousness, or however it's working. Are there molecules that can help build the brain in a different way that we can contain that high energy? Because I feel at some point it sort of blows out the nervous system. So yeah, wondering about that. And maybe if we provide a bunch of different stuff, then the body can choose how to design that. it can decide. So if we have those molecules present and there's some kind of epigenetic or epigenetic or situational factor, then we can, then the intelligence of the body can decide. And so I want to start by talking about a bit of stuff that was coming to mind this morning, and I wrote it down. And I write things that come to mind down, and then it accumulates into too many notebooks, and it's really hard to catch up. So I was thinking to myself at some point I could take the notes from the day and type something up instead of talking about it, and maybe that would be a way to keep up with it daily. I don't know. So I was doing a little bit of playing around with the word diagnosis. And I think I've done this before, so this might be a repetition from a long time ago, but I don't think it's exactly like this. I do think I talked about gnosis or gnosis, however you want to say it. And the definition of gnosis with a G is knowledge of spiritual mysteries. So it's interesting that the second half of the word diagnosis means knowledge of spiritual mysteries. And then I was thinking get rid of the dia and just think of gnosis, and it means sort of understanding or knowledge of spiritual mysteries. So I feel like it's important for us to understand spiritual mysteries, and that's part of what these altered states are getting us into contact with. But it's experiential, so we have to understand it for ourselves. It's like reading the book of the universe as our lived experience. So I found, I looked up the prefix for to speak, or looking for a prefix for speak, because I was thinking, well, our job in a way, if we think about creating our function, is to speak our understanding of spiritual mysteries. So to speak gnosis. And when I looked up that, it took me to a website of a bunch of different prefixes and suffixes. And some of the prefixes for speak are dict, dit, like dictionary, fee, like philosophy or something, and then fa or fess, like confess. So then I'm like, well, what sounds good? It could be dicnosis, or fessnosis, or phenosis. Not phagnosis, though. And so then I looked up what dia means for diagnosis, because I found this prefix suffix site by looking up speak prefix. So dia means word, study, say, speech, reason, to know, and it also means through, across, and between. So then, without even getting rid of the word diagnosis, we can get something like between or through understanding of spiritual mysteries. Or, and then have diagnosis dialogue. So dialogue about our understanding of spiritual mysteries, of like lived experience of spiritual mysteries. And diagnosis could also be to study or say your understanding of spiritual mysteries. So we don't even have to get rid of the fact of the word that we've been diagnosed. So instead of us being diagnosed, we can diagnose. We can study and we can say our understanding of spiritual mysteries. And the trouble is, when we go into that mysterious state, we're living in it. And then when we come back into the objective state, whatever understanding we had in each moment of living it is sort of gone. And then we're left also with an ego structure that is not as intact. and then that makes us sound weird and like we're not ourselves. And so that can result in getting diagnosed, when instead of getting diagnosed, we need to diagnose. We need to speak and share and study our understanding of spiritual mysteries with each other in dialogue. So we could have diagnosis dialogues and just change the meaning of the word diagnosis. So yeah, that's something interesting, just starting to play around with words. And one could do that with probably a bunch of words, and all of a sudden it takes on a whole new meaning. And then the word that we've been so that's been so put onto us, when we change our understanding of it, we don't even need to, we can reframe that, and then it could open up a whole different way of looking at things just by looking at that word differently. And it could be that a mental health diagnosis is a good disguise in a way to do the work of diagnosis, because a lot of times we get on disability or don't end up working as much, we're not able to function, but in our states of non-functioning, sometimes we can still explore our understanding of spiritual mysteries. We can retrospect on living the experience of gnosis, of being immersed in some kind of spiritual mystery, and seeing that life is really a spiritual mystery, but we've made it into something totally different through human conditioning. So it's the conditioning that is troublesome. And I also wrote something down that I'm pretty sure I talked about before, which is the word entropy. And I'm pretty sure entropy means towards chaos. So things usually flow towards greater entropy. I don't know if it's chaos or if it's sort of like if you put a little bit of salt in a big thing of water, it will all dissolve and spread as far out from each other as it can. So I was thinking of when consciousness goes from objective, of seeing the world through the projection of the self and memories, to more subjective. It's sort of like an entropy of the self. So instead of looking through this one pinhole of the self that we think that we are, all of a sudden that it's like that structure gets dropped into a big bucket of water and it starts diffusing apart. And in that way, now we have little bits of us everywhere, and we're able to see from so many different perspectives, because now we're not in this limited self-structure. So it's sort of an entropy of the self. And I think too, in entropy, a lot of times there is a release of energy. And that's one of the reasons why entropy exists, because it releases energy. I could be saying this wrong. I'm trying to remember what I learned in like high school or university or something. And so in order to reverse entropy, to bring something together, we often have to put energy into it. So I feel that it's possible when the self dissolves and this entropy is released, there's energy that's released that was holding this structure together. And when that energy of the self going through like an entropy, when that energy is released, that could be some of the energy that now is available to the brain in order to speed it up or increase the metabolism of it or start to grow new structures. So, maybe the energy doesn't even come from some kind of outside thing, but it's just a matter of all of a sudden the self dissolves and there's all this energy that was wasted in keeping this false illusion together is now available to the brain. And this could be another way that sometimes they say that we become more manic in spring and summer because there's more heat, right? So now there's also heat to break up the self structure and also the release of energy that comes from breaking the self structure. And there's, maybe less heat needed to heat up the body and maintain homeostasis. So now it's available for the brain to grow new structures or new pathways or energize different parts of it that aren't typically energized. And in that way, we can almost think of ourselves as flowers. There's more capacity for that to happen in warmer months for people that it's happened to, for people that are flowering in this way. And also, too, I've experienced when I am in a crisis, oftentimes I get very cold to the point where I'm shaking. So it's like that energy is being taken up into the brain to sort of reestablish the self structure, and it can make my body really, really cold. And so yeah, I don't know if that's true, but it's a sort of way to think about it. And maybe a person needs to know a little bit about what entropy is, but it's just sort of going and spreading out instead of staying together. Like if you put a tablespoon of salt in water, and it would eventually you wouldn't be able to see it because it would just diffuse equally throughout the water. So there's that. And another thing I was thinking about, I was doing some singing this morning because nobody's around so I can sing. And I remember I only started singing in my car a few years ago. And then the first time I sang when I wasn't in my car, I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like there's so much more space to fill up with my voice. Still, it's the same kind of thing. Nobody's around. Somebody could hear me. If I'm singing in my car, someone could see me. But even here, being able to sing to fill up a bigger space feels different. And then maybe filling up a bigger space. And then it would be different still if there were people sitting here watching. So the conditions of the environment change how comfortable we feel expressing ourselves. And it can feel weird to sing in a big basement, a big kind of empty basement. And then, think about how we're put in a psychiatrist's office. That makes it impossible to sing, and we're being looked at in a certain way. So I was also thinking of it in terms of how when a person is first in contact with mania, we're usually out and about and being a bit crazy, or we might be by ourselves being a bit crazy. But what I'm saying is when we work towards embodying our mania, maybe we need to practice, like we can be our best self in a certain, like maybe when we're by ourselves. But then if we go out and try to be our best self, all of a sudden we feel a bit weird because there's people watching us. We probably wouldn't if we were in mania, but I'm talking about practicing embodying the mania in regular consciousness. So being in an objective consciousness, but it's almost like trying to make that subjective energy that made us feel so much like our best self, trying to bring that into like the object of our body. Like when we're being objectified, can we still be that? So when we first go into mania, if we're really confident and happy and stuff, we probably don't care what people are thinking. And that creates a certain ripple and vibration. But after we get captured by psychiatry for the first time, we realize that we are subject to what other people are thinking. And since we went so far into mania not caring what anyone thought, we kind of get punished by psychiatry, saying, well, now, if you didn't care what the masses thought when you were out and about, now you're really going to care about it because we're going to label you with a mental illness, and that's going to distract you from your path of diagnosing, of sharing your understanding of the spiritual mysteries that you went into. So understanding that other people aren't there. So can one bring the qualities of that mania into one's objectified life? Because when we come back to objective consciousness, we're being objectified. We're being objectified by psychiatry, our family, perhaps other people. So, and I'm not saying this is necessarily bad. It's a learning experience. And so here I am by myself here. I could be manic, I could sing, I could dance, I can do whatever I want. But if I was to do that down on the beach, maybe people would join in, but people might think I'm kind of nuts. And I also thought of, so how do we practice being that way with ourselves and then moving slowly outward? Because mania puts it in to view like, this is how it is and this is how it's always going to be, and I'm great and life's great and everything feels so amazing. And then we get a reality check. We get put in check by consensus reality. And so I still feel that, I can work on embodying my mania here. Like, being able to speak to myself on video is a lot different than speaking to a crowd, or releasing the video, or speaking to friends, or speaking to family, or speaking to a doctor. But how can one work towards being the way they would be as their best self in private, in public, and not having others reduce us to what they knew us as? So for example, if I got in touch with that best self in mania, and then I realized, well, I can't be like that around my family, for example, because they don't know me that way. And they're going to be looking at me, projecting their memories of me onto me. And then that projection naturally sort of compares. It's like, something's not right with this person. I'm comparing to what I know of them. And so we are affected by the projections coming out of other people, and we might not realize it. But being aware that other people are looking at us through their memories of us and through their thoughts of us could be helpful, because when we realize that that's happening, it would be good to tone it down, to ease the reactivity of thought towards us. And to go with that, it would be cool to make a creative space or a creative community where things are designed where we don't have to worry about that happening, that it's not based on memories, but it's based on co-creativity. It's not based on, oh, that's not how I remember you being yesterday, or whatever, and we're all sort of keeping each other trapped within this system of thought based on how we all saw each other yesterday or the day before, and whether we like or don't like it. And that's just a very limiting thing, and that whole structure of that process has infused our brain and limited the energy that we have access to. If we're so busy doing that, we can't be busy co-creating with each other. Think about how we can't listen to a podcast and write something else that is unrelated at the same time. Like, I've been listening to Steve Pavlina's 30-Day Abundance Deep Dive pretty much daily, and I'm trying to listen the best I can, because I know that if I'm writing something down, I'm not exactly listening to what he's saying. Sometimes I have an insight to what he's saying and I extrapolate it to my context that I'm making for myself, and I realize that the minute or so that I'm writing down that insight, I'm not hearing the next things that he says. But if I don't write down the insight, then I'm going to miss it. So what I'm saying is, we're listening to our own judgments. We're not able to look and listen with a co-creative lens. And for me, I look and listen to the moment with a co-creative lens, and I think that's why I extrapolate things. So if I'm listening to what somebody's saying, I naturally co-create with what they're saying. If they're saying something, then I'm listening to co-create. I'm not saying, oh no, I don't like that idea, or yeah, that's a good idea, or like judging good and bad. I'm listening, and then when I really listen with a co-creative lens, then I create something based on what they just said. I create something new related to what they're saying. And now, imagine if we talked to each other like that. Imagine if it was additive. So you might think of it as a sort of improv where you say, yes, and Or we could listen for a while and then wait for something to be extrapolated or co-created from what they said. So in this way, we wouldn't be fighting over opinions. We would be co-creating with words. We'd be using words creatively and not conflictually, not in conflict. So I think that would be big. So I'm just realizing now that I'm always listening in that way, in a co-creative way, to add something new and not to judge or limit or have that sort of structure energized in my brain. And I also came with the idea of, well, how do we, if people that we know are full of memories of us, I think I thought of this because Steve Pavlina was talking about someone he knows that thinks about life in terms of, or an abundant life in terms of creating good memories. And not to say that that's right or wrong or anything, but what my mind co-created from that was that if my brain isn't so much based on memories, and that's why it might be lessening in so-called executive function, because that's precognition. It's pre-planning based on cognition, which we've been given. We haven't created that ourselves. It's not creative. It's given to us. So if my brain is less calculating based on memories, that doesn't mean other people's aren't doing that. So other people's are doing that. And that's the thing that I'm more aware of now after this year. And so what could we do about that? So say the energy comes in and we have access to our best self for a while, or a self that we would like to be more of. Now imagine doing something like creating a bit of a talent show reel for oneself. So imagine that in so-called mania, or those higher energetic states where we're more like how we're meant to be, how we were born to be, and we sort of get in alignment with the trajectory of how we were born to be, because it's always with us. So if we click into that, imagine remembering, okay, I'm going to create a little talent show reel for myself. You know, maybe I'll be singing, maybe I'll be dancing, maybe I'll be writing, maybe I'll be doing comedy, maybe I'll be doing something creative, maybe I'll show my paintings, maybe I'll show my process of creativity, or my artwork, or my crafts, or these inventions that I have ideas for but I'm not able to create to 100% manifestation by myself. So it's like a co-creativity, talent, latent ability, becoming coming online type thing. Imagine we're able to create that with some sort of, structure in a way. And then maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours, maybe it's half an hour, 5 minutes. And then we, upload it to YouTube unlisted or something, and we send it to our friends, and we say, and our family, and we say, hey, like, this is some of my possibility and potential that I've come into contact with in an embodied and manifest way in daily life. But I don't always have access to it. Sometimes I fall into negative states where I'm this old version of myself, or even worse, like a version of myself that I really don't even like at all. Could you help me? Can you see ways that you can support me to be more like this? Can you, when you look at me and you feel sorry for me, or you look at me as a mentally ill person, can you remember the hidden abilities that I was able to show you on video? And, can you help me to uphold that? Because when we're in that state of mania, we might be trying to share that with other people, but maybe we can share it with ourselves and then share it with others later and say, hey, I feel I was born on this earth to be a singer, or I was born on this earth to create a song, and that could be sometimes why we tap into feeling like we did do something amazing, like like John Harold said, he thought he was the next Dalai Lama, and he thought he won the Nobel Prize and things. I thought I was going to save the world at one point, but really I feel that we're tapping into that universal genius that any of us can tap into. It can sort of descend upon us like grace sometimes, but we might not have access to it all the time. Even people who are called geniuses, usually after they die, they didn't have access to it all the time. So, but they didn't necessarily display signs of being disturbed by it going away, perhaps. I think that's more of what happens when we fall out of it, and if we get into anger and aggression and some of those things, it's just really annoying to no longer have access to one's best self. It's really sad, and we kick and scream as it withdraws its energy. And it's more like we're fighting to keep that universal energy than we're trying to fight with people around us. But what's happening inside subjectively starts to play out objectively, and it manifests as this psychiatric system and personal conflict and things like that. But it doesn't have to. We can get to the point where it doesn't happen. And even if it's happened that way 10 times, where we've gone kicking and screaming and we end up in the psych ward, we can still work towards that not happening again. And it doesn't matter. It's like the next life in a video game. Oh, it's like you just died, and a lot of times we feel like we did die. And that could be the end of the game, feeling like we died. It's the end of the game. Well, get up and try again. So, yeah, can we make our little talent show? I was thinking of that because I was singing. And I know my parents don't know that I like to sing. And if I made a tape of me singing, not that I'm great or anything, but I'm probably better than they think. So I'm better, that's the point. I'm better than they think. After one gets a mental health diagnosis, a lot of people around could be thinking that now you're worse than they thought you were. But really, we've also sometimes accessed better than we thought we were. Better than we ourselves thought. So the ones around us were even better than what they thought, because they don't even know us fully. So how can they know us fully? They can't. But we can give them clues that we're accessing something important. And maybe that might lead to a bit more compassion when we fall out of that. And, the flower, it withers and dies. And it will start to bloom again later. It can only grow for so long. It grows for some kind of season of the universe. So, and people have different rhythms. Not everyone's is the same. And so that's a lot about that. But it would be nice if I start to speak a little bit more inspirationally and positively and in ways of possibility, because I've talked a lot about like science in a way, and that could be boring for a lot of people. And I find that part interesting, but this is the thing that Steve Pavlina talked about that he really taught me in one of his days of this deep abundance integration, was that there's the level of, there's a certain level and then another level, and then the third level is character sculpting and story. And then the fourth level is relationship with the universe and nature of reality. So I feel that when we go into altered states of consciousness, we go to this fourth level that he talks about, where we are in this process of discovering the nature of reality. And I don't think there's an ultimate nature. It kind of changes with how our brain changes. Just like nature in the environment changes with the seasons of the sun. So when the energy is there, there's a different nature of reality. There's a different, when the brain cells are energized, just like when the flower seeds are energized, there's a real flowering. And then when the energy is not there, when the season changes, It's lower energy. And so nature doesn't get mad that the sun goes away. And I think that's part of what happens with so-called bipolar, is the mood aspect that can manifest is because we're mad the sun went away, and then we're happy when the sun's there, when nature itself is indifferent. So if we can be more indifferent to that, that could be helpful. But anyway, he says the fourth level is exploring the nature of reality and one's relationship with the universe, which that's kind of what my notebooks and my talking to myself is. But the level below that, which is the one I'm sort of missing, is character development and story. So it could be an interesting story that a person diagnosed as bipolar and crazy talks to themselves for 2.5 to 3 years and creates like 400 hours of video over 600 to 800 videos. I think I'm already at 660-ish. So it'll probably be around 800 at least. Could be 1,000. So crazy chick makes 1,000 videos over 3 years and shows the transition from the anger of the mental health system to living one's dreams to coming back to sort of not the greatest living situation and learning that living situation is super important. Well, duh. And then going back out to live one's dreams and hopefully staying out there. So, whatever. The trouble with that is people could watch along the way and be like, oh, this is the answer. But don't see the final result that it usually isn't the answer. I don't think there are any answers. Answers are in the realm of cause and effect and Newtonian things. So it's different than that. And hopefully I can put something at the beginning to be like, proceed with caution. And so yeah, it's kind of an interesting story, but what would be even more interesting would be, and then, oh, she shares it or whatever, I don't know. And oh, what an idiot. So, and all the terrible reactions to it, if anyone even watches it. So it might not even get watched. So that's not that interesting of a story. Most people wouldn't want to watch 300 or 400 hours of just babbling on, though I feel that some people could get ideas of what they might want to create, or it could help to change people's perspective that they're not less intelligent or a lot of things. I don't know what the possibilities are. And so, so the third level is what, like I'm saying, the story and the character sculpting. So I feel like the character sculpting I want to do starting after December. I've tried to do the character sculpting thing along the way. Now I'm seeing that where, say, I got the rainbow wig and I was being kind of a silly character, and that's often when it collapses. So last time in May and June, I didn't create a character. I didn't get all silly, and it was a lot more tame. So I have made attempts to create the character and live as the character, but it hasn't worked. So it's not time for that. But there could be a time when that is what's good to do. And what might I do? Well, I might decide to look more of the part that I am. So after watching the Kinsey movie, the movie about Kinsey, the guy who created the scale of sexuality and everything, I think I'm probably a 4.5 on the Kinsey scale, or maybe a 4.6, maybe a 5. So I think I would want to make that more obvious if I want to attract somebody into my life, to co-create and provide like a beautiful energy to be around. And one thing I could do, I could cut my hair short. I could get some kind of like rainbow-y tattoo. There are a lot of things I can do to make it more obvious, but that's not really one of my needs right now, especially when I'm living in a basement with family. So, and also it's not super supported, unfortunately. So I keep that on the back burner. And what else might I create as my character? I would probably be wanting to be super healthy and eat all organic and maybe raw vegan, because that's a character. My body will be in really good shape. And when you think about people, a lot of people want to lose weight and look good. So I think being in my late 30s and looking good is inspiring for people, maybe. And I want to stay looking healthy. I'm not going to transcend a physical ailment like chronic fatigue and then work towards transcending a mental health condition to be not in shape and not fully able to enjoy the expression of my body. Like, I'm not in good shape right now. I'm not overweight or anything, but I'm not strong. So my character would want to rollerblade a lot. It would want to chase the sun. It would want to be in rich dialogue with open people. It would want to travel to healthy festivals and travel to different learning experiences. Excuse me. And yeah, so I haven't really done that. And maybe it's because I'm not done with this work that I'm doing. And it's a lot of work that I've been doing. And Steve Pavlina also mentioned today something about, would you do what you're doing even if you're never paid for it? So this thing that I've been doing by talking to myself, it has a certain benefit to myself. I think it helps. It's like self-dialogue. Being able to talk to myself and be in dialogue with myself. Be in dialogue when I'm listening to anyone and have insight and a co-creation based on what they're saying. And so I think it's really helping me. And then if I share it, it could help other people, possibly. And I would do this and share it fully without expecting anything in return. And I've been doing this for over 2 years, and I don't get paid for it. And I'm doing it for my benefit, but not only that, I'm doing it in a way that I could share it. I could talk to myself out loud and not record myself, and then I could never share it. But I am intending to, and I've been at this for a long time with the intention of being helpful at some point when I have some kind of feeling that it's the right time to share. And there's some really weird variables in there that could make for an interesting story when that is part of it. And in terms of sharing it, sometimes I write things down that it seems the universe is telling me about when I do decide to share it. And today it said, don't worry about the reaction of thought. So you say something, people with their opinions and thoughts are going to react. It says, don't worry about the reaction of thought, but the co-creation with the dreamers. So some people, the point of this really is to get people into that co-creative mindset and being in dialogue with themselves and the universe, and not being in repetitive monologue of thought. That isn't good for the brain. The repetitive monologue of thought is the memories playing one after another, and that repetition kind of wears out the brain cells. And I think that's part of what leads to things like Alzheimer's. And we need to be able to, like, if I'm thinking in these tape loops and yet I'm doing everything, these tape loops don't really have anything to do with what I'm doing. So I'm not present with what I'm doing. I'm absent, lost in self-consciousness. And I'm not in actuality consciousness. So with the brain operating so much in something that's an illusion while doing all these things, this repetitive thought process is tied in with doing all these things. So then when those memories die of the self, like I am this, I did this, I remember this, this person's this and this person's that, all those memories that have been going on repeat while we're doing everything, those memories going on repeat are tied into doing everything. So when the memories going on repeat start to die in Alzheimer's and our sense of self, our self-consciousness, and we're so used to doing things with this self-consciousness going on repeat, when that dies, we lose our ability to do stuff too. So people become confused and not functional because of that. Of the brain operating with this illusion of self while doing stuff actually, and then we never actually realize what we're doing. We'll do our morning routine and we'll leave the door for work and we'll think, how did we even, I don't remember showering. So that's the problem. We need to not remember that we showered, but we need to be present when we are showering and present when we're brushing our teeth and present. And if we're doing things while present, then it won't be tied into the tape loops. You know, we're used to doing things while absent. So then when the presence of the absence is gone, so the presence of thought, which is being absent to being present, when that goes, then we don't know how to do anything because we don't even know how we did it when we were absent. We only know how to do it when we're absent, and that's realizing, how did I shower? How did I get from home to work? So what I'm trying to say is we're on the automatic pilot, and the automatic pilot is tied to when these memories, I should do this, I am this, I remember doing this, this is my wife, this is my brother, this is my blah, blah, blah. Like, we only know automatic pilot tied into these thoughts. So when those thoughts go, we have no more automatic pilot, and we need to cultivate presence pilot. We need to cultivate, pilot's friend, being a friend to the moment. So, and I feel that's part of what happens when we go into so-called mania or subjectivity. We're very present every moment we're doing something. And being present, it has a lot of meaning and significance. And we're feeling the significance, and it's changing in its rich variation from moment to moment. And then when that stops happening and the energy is withdrawn from the brain, and we come back to our objective consciousness, we don't know how to function anymore because we just learned how to function moment to moment with full presence and full enjoyment and full celebration. So the brain doesn't want to go back to functioning with these repetitive thought loops. And I'm not saying the repetitive thought loops aren't there or don't come back, but for me, I don't have those repetitive thought loops. And also putting the energy into doership can be a problem too. So there's a lot of different layers to it, a lot of different ways to think about it, but I've been trying to make this point to myself about the importance of forgetting. The importance of forgetting this repetitive thought stuff while being present and doing stuff. And the more we can forget that while doing, the more we actually learn to do, and we activate the brain to be doing stuff while fully present and never thinking, oh, where was I? I don't know how I just did that. Because the automatic pilot was doing it. So we need to be a presence pilot, and then also realize that there'll be times when we don't really function because we don't have the automatic pilot anymore. When we went into so-called mania, we were fully present as the pilot, and we're not used to that. And that presence pilot messes up the automatic pilot, and so we lose our so-called executive function of the automatic pilot. That's why I don't really buy into executive function as it's defined now, because it's based on the automatic pilot that is happening when we are having our repetitive memories going on, and we're trying to set goals in our mind and project them and move towards them. That has nothing to do with the moment. There's a totally different process of seeing the moment fully and then some richness of the moment is available to us. And so I can see how this shift messes up our executive function. So when we're in mania, we're able to function very well in a totally different way, totally different behaviors. And then when that goes away, we're not able to function because basically executive function is meaningless once you've gone into mania. So it has no meaning. So it actually is a state of repetitive thoughts going on that have no meaning. And mania is full of meaning. Every moment feels so meaningful that it's very intense. And how can the brain go back to meaninglessness once it's had this sense of meaning? So normally our senses are conditioned by thought, but then that gets deconditioned and our senses are conditioned by sensing meaning. And it's really beautiful. And this is related to something else that I've probably talked about to some extent, but so this is related to fight, flight, or freeze. When we're in fight or flight or freeze, sometimes things can also happen where we think, how did I do that? I don't know how I did that. So say somebody jumps in a river to save somebody, and they normally wouldn't jump in a river like that, but if they see the fight or flight, the fight or flight reflex gets activated, and that intensity, it increases people's strength, it increases different things that people are able to do something superhuman and save somebody. And I feel that, and I think they probably remember what they did. They don't necessarily forget, but they're just more like, how did I do that? How did I have that strength? It was a strength I didn't know I had. And that's part of what is activated in so-called mania, but it's not fight or flight. It's this mechanism of being free from thought. And when we're free of thought, we have access to a lot more power because we're in a circuit. We're connected with the actual moment. We're not connected with the past of thought. So we might think, well, how did I do that? But actually remember it. Because, I don't know why exactly, but I feel that that's part of the quality we need to bring into everyday life. So we might think of fight or flight as kind of an automatic thing, but it's not really automatic. It's a matter of full perception of what's needed in the moment. And when we fully perceive everything in the circumstances, the brain understands what kind of energy and strength it needs in order to save that person. And so it tries to activate that type of energy. And so we get into contact with the strength we didn't know we had. But we can do that every moment, but not be in fight or flight. I think that's part of what that type of perception, the type of perception we have in fight or flight, that how our waking consciousness is now, is only reserved for fight or flight, like a true necessary fight or flight. We also have access to that strength every moment, but we just have this different algorithm in our brain going on. So we have access to the fight, flight, freeze, or free mechanism. I feel we have that in mania. So in mania, it doesn't come in as fight or flight. That energy in regular consciousness is reserved for fight or flight, like getting out of a bad situation. But in manic consciousness, that energy is there, but it doesn't manifest as fight or flight. It manifests as higher energy to perceive meaning in the moment and be free from the thought forms that would keep us imprisoned in the reality that we've been living. So it's no longer fight or flight. But what I'm trying to say too is that when we come back to regular consciousness, we're now in fight or flight. Because in regular consciousness, it is reserved for fight or flight. But when we're in manic consciousness, that extra energy just gives us a real power and strength to manifest our dreams. But in this structure, it's that energy is only reserved for fight or flight. So what I'm saying is, if we have that type of energy in mania, it's not fight or flight, it's possibility, perceiving possibility, moving based on that, full action, not delaying based on thinking, oh, I'll do something later, doing it now. And our brain is still in that. But the thing is that when we go back to regular consciousness, we're in fight or flight or freeze. So often we end up freezing, which is what happens, and we're helped along by the medications. And when we're in freeze, we don't have any executive functioning. So it might look like we're not functioning, but we're in freeze. If we stop taking the medication, we'll probably be in fight or flight, and we're fighting and running from the system. Or that's kind of what happens when we feel like somebody's after us or whatever. Because at a certain point, that high energy of creating dreams and manifesting dreams, we sort of get to the edge of where we can go with that, and then it turns into fight or flight. Like, the world of thought is catching up to us. Our brain is moving faster and stronger, so we're able to go so far ahead of this whole structure of thought in society, but the gravity of it's so big that it will eventually come and swallow us up. And when it gets close, we start to have this fight or flight reaction happen, and we feel like somebody's out to get us. And there's nobody out to get us. It's just the structure of society. I don't want to say just, but it's that structure. The structure of society is in opposition to us living our dreams for the most part. So, and then when we get captured by that, we usually freeze. And then the meds do what they do. They kind of tranquilize us in freeze. But then when the energy comes back, it's not even really coming back. It's just the freeze is going away, and we end up going back into free. So a way to keep the fight or flight or freeze away of thought catching up with us, of systems of thought catching up with us, whether it's the family system of what we should be or the psychiatric system of what we should be, we can keep that away. And if we can keep that away, we can stay in free. We can still be free from it. So we might not be able to live our dreams right away, but we might be able to stay free of that. And when we're free, we can be co-creative. So I would say right now I'm in a free state. So I'm not literally free, like floating through the universe, but my brain is free from that thought conditioning, and I'm able to be co-creative. And part of it is I'm able to be co-creative with that conditioning, in that I can look from the outside at the structure of, say, the psychiatric system, and then create these different ideas that would help to keep different structures of thought away that would lead me to be in fight, flight, or freeze. So recently I realized there's nobody after me. It's thought. It's this different algorithm of co-creativity and freedom of the mind, and then the non-freedom of the mind of, this is who you are, this is what you should do, this is what you're supposed to be like according to everyone else, blah, blah, blah. And when that comes back, if it's through psychiatry, I'd probably be frozen, like, and afraid. So that's a long-winded thing. 53 minutes. This whole staying at home and taking care of myself takes a long time. I ate the overnight oats, and then I made a smoothie, which takes time to make and wash. It took time to get those groceries, and soon it's going to be time to make dinner. And then I'll probably be out of broccoli and have to go get more. I'm not used to this. I'm used to eating Laura bars for breakfast and then going out, getting coffee, and eating dinner somewhere. And I'm realizing, kind of like just getting food and having other people make it for me. I never thought about food at a restaurant this way before, and it's pretty obvious, but we're not only paying for the price of the food, we're paying for the price of the cost to make it, the person taking time to make it, and also the space we might be sitting in while eating it. And one could pay for one's own space to make things and have all the tools and spend time going to get the groceries or even ordering them online. Then it takes a lot of time to make those things. So by having a kitchen, one is almost forced to make food for themselves, and it takes a lot of time and energy. Of course, that seems reasonable, but try and do a 2-month trial where you don't cook at home at all. You maybe eat breakfast at home, like a breakfast bar, but the rest you get out and about. And it is pretty eye-opening, actually. I'm seeing that now. And something that probably clued me into thinking about that is what Steve Pavlina said today about something in his talk. He mentioned delegation. And he mentioned that every time you buy a coffee, you're delegating making coffee to someone else. But we don't think of it that way. We think of it as just buying a coffee. So I think that's why it came to mind that paying for a coffee, we're also paying for that space that they've had to make the coffee for us and the people to make the coffee. So no wonder it costs more. So if one doesn't want to make one's own coffee or have space to make coffee, then it costs a bit more because one's not paying for that space and everything that goes along with making the coffee. But one doesn't even need a kitchen to make coffee, but still. Just thinking about it in that way, after my experiment of eating at restaurants pretty much for a month, has changed my view, and I almost feel like I don't want to make food for myself as much. I like being out and about. So what that would require for me is sunshine, because I don't like to be out and about in the rain. So I'm doing that this year, and then perhaps one day having like a co-creative community where there's a smoothie bar where people make smoothies that enjoy making smoothies for everyone. And so there's an opportunity for health. Because that's the next thing I could do, is try to find the healthiest options of eating out and about. I wasn't doing that last time. So now that I realize, hey, maybe I don't want to make my own food as much, where can I eat that's healthier? Because I do want to be healthier. My goal of making my own food isn't because I enjoy making my own food, it's to be healthier. So I can definitely design that into being out and about and supporting those businesses as well. Unfortunately, there's not many healthy places where I'm living right now. So that could be something to think about for me when I get back, is maybe I want to pay a little bit more for the room I'm living in when I get back, but be closer to healthier restaurants. There are a lot downtown, that's for sure, but I'm quite far away. So there's some places you can be right on the same block as a bunch of healthy restaurants. And not only that, it's a way to be more social and meet up with people who also want to eat at a restaurant here and there. That's something I did learn by being out and about. So here I am thinking, oh, I'm out and about eating at restaurants to avoid being at home, and I don't have a kitchen to cook it anyway, and I'm learning something totally different. So that's what I like about the journey of a mental health diagnosis, is that I learn a lot. I learn a ton, and that's the part that keeps me going, is that I know I can keep learning. And so, by delegating coffee, like I would go get a coffee sometimes this month and sit in Tim Hortons and drink it and watch the recording of Steve Pavlina's talk that day if I didn't get to watch it live. Or I was able to watch it live there, I think, too, depending on if I was there at that time. And I don't have to clean up. Yeah, the cup thing is a bit wasteful, for sure. So that's something that I'm learning. And I have to go make dinner for myself soon, and I don't necessarily want to. And what else do I want to talk about? I made up another little word. Instead of bipolar, I put bijective. And bijective being a play on subjective and objective. So I feel like we go between subjectivity and objectivity. And that's what I'm using to summarize going between different states, like the dreaming while wide awake, awakening state, and the more sleepy state of self-conscious ego structure. And there's many ways to explain why that is more of a sleepy state. And part of it is what I was just describing. That last chunk of the video I made, I put as the first 10 minutes of this one because it was too long for the whole video with the earlier bits. So I was saying how having the thought self stuff going on is not even knowing how one is doing anything. And, in a way that is closer to the truth, even of being in a really awake state, because there's no doer, it's perception and action in the moment. I won't get into that now, but saying objective versus subjective, I kind of like that. It's better than saying depression and mania. And I think we get more depressed after we've been in the subjective dream creativity meaning algorithm of the brain, and then we come back to this sort of historical, boring, repetitive, memory-based, believing projection algorithm. So the thing too is I feel that when we go into that subjective state, there's nobody to know. There's no real self-consciousness. There's full awareness of things that are happening. And so I don't think we can stop some of the stuff that happens when we transition from subjective back to objective consciousness, but we can by perceiving in the moment, we can be very aware of what's happening. So our brain is in this freedom algorithm of co-creating with the moment. And then I was trying to explain in the last one, when we go back to objectivity, consciousness, it manifests as fight, flight, or freeze when we were before in free. So when the thoughts start coming around us in terms of other people and circumstances to sort of capture that energy, we experience fight or flight or freeze. And we can feel afraid to death, and we can even feel like we are dying. So to me, those would be objective signs that we're going back into objectivity. It's not literally we're dying or the world is ending, but feeling in this way can be an obvious sign that we are, coming in for a landing and going back to objective consciousness. I used to call this transconscious. So we can objectively feel the signs or see the signs of going back to that other form of consciousness, which is really a different dimension of the mind and a different dimension of the world. And it's like returning from space. It's kind of scary. And it's the death of that subjectivity dominant state. And so we might actually mistake that feeling of death of the subjectivity. When we're going back into objectivity, we might mistake inaction that for, we need to kill ourselves. And so when that's happening objectively, the subjectivity is really afraid. And the fear is coherent with what is sort of objectively seeming to happen. It seems like the body might end its own existence of its own accord. But what could be seen to be happening in a way is is, man, it's really hard to explain. It has something to do with the layers of repetitive thought, repetitive thought coming back online and going back into autopilot mode. So when that happens, the autopilot mode of thought would almost kill the body. And then the subjectivity is watching in fear of that. And it takes a lot of strength of the subjectivity to save the objective body when that's happening. So I'm trying to relate the subjectivity to being free of the systems of thought. And then when the systems of thought start to come back on, we're more objective, but there's a transition period. And in that transition period, even the subjectivity can be afraid for the life of the objective body. And the thought coming back on would almost kill the body to spite the subjectivity. And so what it seems like I've been doing with how I've learned how to handle that while alone is that I've trained my subjectivity enough to know how to save myself when that comes back on, instead of relying on the psychiatric system to do that. So they might tranquilize me, but I can tranquilize myself, or I can take other supplements that will sort of calm down the body. You know, it's kind of like being rebirthed into objectivity, and it's really frightening. Like, imagine how afraid a baby must be when it's going through the birth canal, and we're sort of being rebirthed into objectivity. And when we are, we can bring certain wisdom back with us to diagnose, to speak of our understanding of spiritual mystery. But it's funny, we come back and we get diagnosed with a mental illness. So many of these things that happen objectively have a subjective reframe. But since we're not able to understand the subjectivity and share it with others, we end up being objectified and these things happening. But, there's still clues in the terrible stuff that's happening. To get diagnosed is terrible, but you look at the word diagnose and it means to speak of one's understanding of spiritual mystery. So you just look at the word in a different way and you're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Not sit here and be diagnosed with a mental illness and be like a vegetable or a zombie, but share that subjectivity. And so that subjectivity, there's this transition that happens, that we can see those things as happening as a sign of what's happening as the return to objectivity. So one might not be as afraid if it's like, okay, this is what's happening as the return to objectivity. And just as in consciousness, it's possible from driving from point A to point B and being like, how did that happen? I don't know what happened there. We can, when going from point A of subjectivity to point B, subjectivity can be watching these horrible objective things going on, like maybe somebody rushing to harm themselves, and thinking, how is this happening? Like, I'm not controlling this. When one felt like one was in creativity in the subjective state, well, the creativity is ending. And when the creativity is ending, we're objectified, and that almost can get mistaken as end the body. So these things can be misinterpreted. And if we're able to understand them, you might see how it could be a lot less fearful. And it would be almost like if somebody was in a plane and they didn't know they were in an airplane, and they started coming in for a landing, that might feel kind of scary because they didn't know they were in an airplane. But if one can realize that in that subjectivity consciousness that happens for a certain period of time, one is kind of in an airplane and there's going to be a landing. And it's kind of a scary landing, especially when one was put up in the airplane flying it by oneself without any lessons, which is often what happens in so-called mania, or the creative meaning co-creation algorithm versus the perception-based algorithm of the moment versus believing, history, projecting, memory. So I was also seeing mania as a call to wake up, and others around us are trying to put us back to sleep as the self. So coming in for a landing is also kind of going back to sleep with the thought algorithm. And at first the brain really resists it and can leave one non-functional, completely non-functional. And the self dies in mania, and only an illusion can die. So there's this illusion that's trying to die, but in the same way I was talking about how, this self that we have going on in autopilot or repetition, I should, blah, blah, me, blah, 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 thoughts, and we're doing something at the same time and we don't even realize how it's being done because we're not present with it. That same sort of thing happens with, sometimes when the self-harm programs come back in, because the self is harm. So then when it comes back online, sometimes it's very obvious the harm that the self is doing. And the self will often inflict harm on itself in order to call attention that it needs help, because it doesn't want to harm other people. Because the self generally does harm one's body and other people. But we don't see it that way generally. But after being in the creativity, meaning, perception algorithm, co-creating, then it's pretty obvious what the self is doing. And that's one of the reasons why we check out of that whole system. And I was talking about bipolar and bijective. So we could be bijective instead of bipolar, whatever that means. Because bipolar implies there's a person who is bipolar. But bijective implies that there is a brain that is bijective. It can see things in a subjective way or an objective way. There's no person. Like, we have this brain, but there's no person in there. Like, I don't know if anyone can see that, but there isn't. Even though sometimes we feel that way, and it's kind of compassion from the universe to make us feel like we are in control, but it's not really that way. And I got an email from Jean Houston this morning, and she's a lady that's interesting. I think she has amazing things to say. Like, maybe one day I'll be able to speak in an inspirational way and not be like blah blah mental health every other word. She's not saying that, but she sent an email about we need to unlock our quantum powers. And when I see that, I feel, man, we already had our quantum powers unlocked, and it was locked in a spring-loaded can, and when it got unlocked, it just blew up, and it was so much energy to try to navigate, and it was like being put into a completely different world where we have no compass and no map, and the map is the moment, kind of like the Celestine prophecy. And so she's saying to people, probably people of consensus mindset, hey, we need to unlock these quantum powers. And I printed them off because I think these 5 quantum powers are important. And if you read this from the lens of, hey, I've experienced so-called mania, you'll recognize these factors as something that we were already thrust into. So no need to unlock them. We need to understand how to embody them and to rein them in, because they've already been unlocked. And that's the part that I'm, hopefully one day it will say on something like this, about unlocking your quantum powers. It'll say at the bottom or the top, If you've had a spiritual emergency or extreme state of consciousness or altered state of consciousness that you were thrust into without some kind of exogenous substance like LSD, or, even in that, if you had a non-volitional altered state of consciousness, you might have already experienced these. So we will help you to embody them, because when you're thrust into them and then it starts to retreat, that is a really scary process, and oftentimes we're trying to hang on to them. I think that's part of what causes the distress after a mania, is that we're trying to hang on to it. And when we feel it retreating, we get angry, we get afraid, and when we're in those states of emotion with extra power, then very powerful, fearful, subjective or objective experiences can manifest to be coherent with that inner state. If we could be like, oh, like the tide's going out, the energy's withdrawing, no big deal, maybe we wouldn't experience such a big thing. And I noticed, for me, last time I had the experience of the energy withdrawing, I noticed how the fear was trying to hook me back into some kind of help, and I didn't fall for it. So I feel like it's possible this next time I'll just notice the brain shift, and there won't be maybe any fear, and it could just be a matter of just being like, and just, oh, I'm back. Kind of just like waking up in the morning, like, oh, I won't really be some big jolty thing. Because if one is afraid, then one might think I am dying, and it's like, well, there is no I. So don't destroy the body, just be still with it. But anyway, so I would add to this, well, if you've been in extreme states of consciousness, and even if you were diagnosed with a so-called severe and persistent mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, you might recognize this as you probably went into these powers already, but you haven't learned to embody these or make them, like, you didn't have the brain circuits to handle that energy. So here's how you can build those circuits to better manifest what that energy is showing you. So her 5 quantum powers of Jean Houston, quoting them, are the power to expand time so you can do more in less time than ever before without adding stress to your life. Well, how expansive did time feel in mania, and how much could we do? How much energy did we have to do stuff? The way that it manifests as we're not able to sleep, to people who are in objective consciousness, or even if we objectify ourselves and look at the clock, could be that we've just expanded time. And that could be possible. And by expanding time, that can only happen when we have more energy. So when we have more energy, it's possible we don't need to sleep as much. And the second one, the power to experience sustained fire to keep you operating at your highest level throughout even the longest, most challenging days. Well, I had a sustained fire for a good month or two. So how do we experience this sustained fire to operate at our highest energy level? So we've gone into the experience of being able to operate at our highest energy level. And so how do we do that more? People have probably not experienced operating as a high energy level as we have. So here's somebody wanting to take a course in order to do that. We didn't have to take a course. The power to partner with the energy of the universe to more easily accomplish your goals and fulfill your dreams. While that state of subjectivity, of co-creativity, of meaning, of perception was partnering with the universe. We don't see it that way. We're told it's a disease after. Imagine if we were told after, wow, you partnered with the universe for a good month. You must have got a lot of goals towards your dreams accomplished. But we're not told that. The power to expand and express your creativity without sacrificing your daily responsibilities. So, this one we could need to learn, because we go into states of expanding and expressing our creativity, and oftentimes we do sacrifice our daily responsibilities. Like maybe we don't go to work or what have you. But I think we can learn to not sacrifice them. So basic responsibility, eating and sleeping, and perhaps going to work. But for me, I would say that it would be cool to design working when we're able to work and hibernating when we're not. So not buying into 9 to 5, but mine might be a different, mine might be 5 to 3, meaning 3 months non-functional and not really doing much, and 5 months really co-creative. So I could enter into a co-creative contract with the universe for 4 or 5 months, and then be like, well, I'm going to be eating and hanging out with friends and non-doing. And it's important to, the non-doer circuits are really important. I'm trying to write down a few notes to maybe simplify some of this at some point. So, what are our daily responsibilities? We can change that too. We don't have to go based on what we've been told they are. And the last one, the power to attract the money, people, and resources you need to move your projects forward and achieve the level of success that you're striving for. So we do attract a lot of this in that highly energized state of consciousness. It seems like people want to help us, and we start projects. And, in the mental health system, they might say, oh, you start a lot of projects and you don't finish them. But what we don't say to them is, people try to start projects with us. It's not only us. There are people that are really inspired by what we say, and some of them are like, yeah, like, let's do that. And so I feel that part of our role could be to help people find inspired creative projects to do together. But we can't necessarily physically actualize all of our ideas and insights into things. Sometimes it feels like we can see things from like an eagle eye view. So we could share with people, oh, like, what if you did it this way? Or what if you co-created with this person? Or blah, blah, blah. Could be more like consultants. But when we try to be the agents of our own ideas, then, that would be like the queen ant having the idea to build this wonderful colony, and then just trying to build all the ant tunnels and the anthill themselves and go get the food. That would be impossible. So other people, so to me, it would say we need a way to attract people to co-create with us, because we do have a lot of great ideas. So it would be different that, say I'm in a state of mania for a month and I'm like having different ideas and talking to people random, and they're like, no, get away from me. That's a dumb idea. But that's not true. I was talking about gardening with some guy one time, and he was almost willing to come over and like build all these planters in my yard. So they all of a sudden are willing to come and help. But how do we do that in a bigger level? And me talking to myself is kind of saying to the other people in this other energy who have accessed it, to be like, hey, what have you seen? What have you envisioned? What can you do? What part can you play to build something completely different that I don't know what it is? And it's not based on telling anyone what to do. It's people acting of their own passions. So, yeah, so the power to attract the money, people, and resources you need to move projects forward. I'm hoping that that's what some of these videos might do. Well, I'm not really hoping that. I'm just wondering. I'm not hoping for anything. Hope is a projection, and it implies that I know what to hope for, and that would limit the possibilities. That would project onto the universe and say, hey, universe, I know what is supposed to happen, not you. And I know the intelligence is in the universe and not in my brain. So I'm not going to pretend to know. And, as part of what we create, it'd be cool to have like a lived experience research division, which isn't about what meds and things, but what works in lived experience, not to calm down the intensity, but to make us more of who we are. And I think who we are is something that we find out by working together. We don't find it out by all having our little individual paths. We live in the same eternity. So that's kind of what I do, and that's why, for me, it's not about finding the research, even though I do look at a little bit here and there when it appears. I don't go seek it out. I could, but that would create way too much information. Just being in the moment and exploring things in due time creates books of stuff that I want to talk about. So imagine if I studied other stuff, it would be ridiculous. So it'd be cool to have more people interested in this kind of research, and maybe to look into scientifically some of the hypotheses. These are little hypotheses. And something else I wrote that I realized is that, I might think that certain people are against me, but it's not them, it's memory. It's psychological memory. It's the logic of the self. It's people with the memory, and they're acting based on the self. And some people have had this radical mutation, and then others around are still operating based on what they think of us. So think of it as memories, like people trying to talk based on memories and not on co-creativity. People like memories because they can talk about what happened, and when we talk about that, nothing changes really. Like it's not co-creative. It's generally limiting. But then I realized that's okay if some people operate based on memories, and thinking of what Steve Pavlina said about that person who says they want to create good memories. I don't necessarily want to create good memories, but maybe I can give memory people some good memories. So my brain might be co-creative and thinking about all these books and ideas, but that has nothing to do with my parents. They're not interested in that, but they're maybe interested in having a nice memory of me or something. So can one do that? Sure, why not?